here's the truth. Men lie. They lie to good women. And yes, this happens more than we'd like to admit. The truth is, when it comes to relationships, honesty is not always a man's first instinct. And as painful as it is to hear, these lies can be destructive. But why do they lie? Why would someone who claims to care about you look you in the eye and say something untrue? Let's break it down, because there's always a reason behind the behavior. Men often lie to avoid losing someone they care about, especially when they fear that telling the truth will push the person away. The fear of rejection is a powerful emotion. And for many men, it's easier to fabricate a story or withhold certain details than to risk a painful breakup. When men care deeply about a woman, they may convince themselves that telling the truth will hurt her too much. So they choose to hide certain aspects of their lives or feelings. It may not always be malicious. Rather, it's often driven by a misguided sense of protection. They want to keep the peace and maintain a relationship, believing that telling lies will keep things intact and prevent any confrontation or conflict that might lead to separation. This fear of losing someone can stem from the emotional investment they've already made in the relationship. Relationships are built on trust, connection, and shared experiences. And for many men, the thought of those things being erased by an uncomfortable truth can be terrifying. Instead of facing the uncertainty that comes with revealing their vulnerability or mistakes, they take the easy route of telling a lie, hoping that it will temporarily soothe the situation. This fear of losing someone can often cause them to underestimate the strength and resilience of their partner, failing to realize that honesty, no matter how painful, is ultimately more important than a lie meant to shield them from reality. What men often don't realize, though, is that this kind of dishonesty can end up causing even more harm in the long run. While the lie may provide temporary relief, it erodes trust. The more lies are told to avoid confrontation or rejection, the deeper the eventual fallout will be when the truth inevitably comes to light. The emotional pain of betrayal is often more damaging than the discomfort that comes from simply speaking the truth up front. The relationship becomes built on a fragile foundation, and once that truth emerges, the woman involved may begin to question not only the lie itself, but also the integrity of the entire relationship. When men lie to avoid losing someone, they fail to recognize that the person they are trying to protect, often a woman they care for, deeply deserves honesty and transparency. Lying to avoid conflict only devalues the relationship, implying that the other person isn't strong enough to handle the truth. It undermines the level of respect and trust required for a healthy, enduring connection. True intimacy is built on vulnerability, openness, and the willingness to confront difficult conversations together. By choosing to hide the truth, men are inadvertently pushing their partners away, as the emotional distance created by dishonesty makes genuine connection impossible. Lying to avoid losing someone is a short-term fix that creates long-term problems. It may offer a temporary sense of security, but it chips away at the foundation of the relationship, eroding trust, respect, and emotional connection. The lesson here is that while it's understandable to fear rejection or pain, embracing honesty, even when it's difficult, is essential for building a relationship that lasts. Only by addressing the hard truths head on can a relationship grow stronger, more resilient, and more grounded in trust. Men often lie to avoid conflict. This is a pattern that's ingrained in many, whether it's because of how they've been raised or simply the belief that confronting difficult situations will only lead to arguments and discomfort. For some men, the idea of dealing with conflict can feel overwhelming. The thought of having a difficult conversation, or worse, a heated argument, creates a deep sense of anxiety. The natural instinct in these situations is to avoid conflict altogether, even if it means resorting to dishonesty. Instead of facing an uncomfortable truth, Some men choose to lie because they believe it will keep the peace and avoid a confrontation that could escalate into a bigger issue. The desire to avoid conflict can stem from a number of different fears. For many, it's the fear of being rejected or judged. They may worry that being honest about their feelings, actions, or mistakes will cause their partner to view them negatively, leading to distance or even a breakup. This fear of rejection makes it easier to say what they think the other person wants to hear rather than be open about their true emotions or thoughts. The other person wants to hear rather than be open about their true emotions or thoughts. Even though the intent is to keep the relationship intact, these lies can have the opposite effect. When the truth eventually comes out, it creates an even bigger conflict than if the issue had been addressed from the start. For others, the avoidance of conflict comes from not knowing how to handle emotionally charged situations. They may feel unequipped to navigate deep conversations, especially those that could stir up emotions or lead to discomfort. It's easier to lie than to risk having a conversation that feels emotionally overwhelming or awkward. Rather than face their own vulnerability, they choose to hide behind a lie, thinking that it will protect both themselves and their partner from difficult emotions. But this avoidance can be detrimental to both parties in the long term. By failing to address the real issues in the relationship, they are not only building an emotional wall, but also preventing the relationship from evolving into something more authentic and fulfilling. The problem with this approach is that lying doesn't solve anything, it just postpones the inevitable. The truth always finds a way of coming to light, and when it does, the resulting conflict can be even more intense than if it had been addressed earlier. In fact, lying to avoid conflict often creates a bigger issue when the truth finally surfaces. The partner may feel betrayed, hurt, and confused as to why the truth wasn't shared with them from the beginning. The damage done by the lie is often more significant than if the conversation had honestly and openly from the start. By lying to avoid conflict, a man may inadvertently rob his partner of the opportunity to participate in resolving the situation. Every healthy relationship requires open, honest communication to address issues together. By lying, the man is essentially shutting his partner out of the problem-solving process. This dynamic can cause emotional distance over time as one partner feels disconnected and excluded from important aspects of the relationship. Instead of building trust and collaboration, it leads to isolation and mistrust. In the end, avoiding conflict through lies may seem like a way to keep things easy, but it only makes matters worse. Healthy relationships are built on the foundation of open and honest communication, even when it's difficult. Choosing to face conflict head on rather than avoiding it with lies strengthens trust, encourages growth, and deepens the emotional connection between partners. Being truthful even when it's uncomfortable is the key to maintaining a genuine, lasting relationship. Men often lie because of insecurity. This insecurity can manifest in many forms, whether it's about their career, their physical appearance, their emotions, or their social status. The root of the insecurity often lies in a fear of being seen as inadequate, unworthy, or incapable. For some men, especially those who have been taught to always appear strong or confident, revealing vulnerability feels like a weakness. This fear of being judged or not measuring up can lead them to fabricate stories or hide certain aspects of themselves in an effort to protect their self-image. When a man feels insecure, he might exaggerate accomplishments, inflate his successes, or hide personal struggles in an attempt to appear more competent or in control than he truly feels. It's not that he necessarily wants to deceive. It's more about protecting himself from the discomfort of being perceived as weak or not enough. The insecurity causes him to prioritize the image he projects over being vulnerable and showing his true self. For example, he may downplay his failures or avoid conversations about things that make him feel less than confident, like his financial situation or past mistakes. He believes that if you see him as anything less than perfect, it will cause you to lose respect for him or even leave him. So he chooses to lie to maintain an image of strength and success, hoping that these lies will protect him from the fear of rejection. This behavior stems from the belief that he must live up to certain societal standards or expectations. Many men are taught from a young age that they must be self-reliant, successful, and strong. They're told that vulnerability is something to be avoided, especially in relationships. As a result, when faced with insecurities, the idea of showing weakness becomes unbearable. Rather than acknowledging and addressing their vulnerabilities, they opt to lie to cover them up. This creates a cycle where the more they lie, the more they feel trapped in the image they've created for themselves. They fear that revealing the truth will not only expose their insecurities, but will also cause others to view them as less capable or deserving. For men who struggle with insecurity, it's difficult to accept the idea that they can be loved and accepted for who they truly are. They fear that their flaws, mistakes, or vulnerabilities will make them unworthy of affection and respect. So they continue to lie, believing that hiding their true selves will allow them to keep the connection with their partner intact. However, this only prevents the relationship from growing on a deeper level. Authentic love is built on honesty, vulnerability, and the willingness to show up as you truly are. But when a man hides behind lies, he's not giving his partner the chance to truly understand him or love him for who he is not for the image he's trying to maintain. The sad irony is that by lying out of insecurity, he's pushing his partner further away. His inability to be honest and open about his feelings and fears creates a barrier that makes real connection impossible. Insecure men often believe that if they tell the truth, it will lead to rejection. But the reality is that honesty and vulnerability are what actually strengthen relationships. When a partner feels safe enough to be open about their struggles, it creates a deeper level of intimacy. The more a man hides his insecurities behind lies, the more disconnected he becomes from his partner, and ultimately, the relationship suffers. The key here is that insecurity doesn't have to be something to hide. In fact, it's something to embrace. Every person, man or woman, has vulnerability. The most genuine relationships are the ones in which both partners can be honest about their flaws and still feel loved and accepted. Instead of letting insecurity drive him to lie, a man needs to learn that revealing his true self is the only way to build a meaningful, authentic connection. Men often lie because of a fear of commitment. This fear isn't always rooted in a desire to hurt the person they're with, but rather in an internal struggle that they may not even fully understand themselves. For many men, the idea of making a long-term commitment can feel overwhelming, especially when it comes to relationships. It's not necessarily a reflection of how they feel about the person they're with, but rather a reflection of their own fears and uncertainties about the future. They may feel that making a commitment means giving up their freedom, or they may worry about not being able to live up to the expectations that come with it. The fear of commitment can also be tied to past experiences. Men who have been hurt in previous relationships may have built up emotional walls to protect themselves from future pain. They may lie to avoid confronting these feelings or the reality of what a serious relationship requires. This fear of vulnerability makes it difficult for them to open up fully or commit wholeheartedly. So they may tell lies to keep things in a state of uncertainty where they can maintain control. The lies serve as a defense mechanism, allowing them to delay fully engaging with the relationship or facing the emotional risks involved. Some men may also lie to avoid feeling pressure to take things to the next level when they aren't ready. In today's world, there's often an unspoken expectation that a relationship should naturally progress toward commitment, whether it's moving in together, getting married, or other milestones. For men who aren't sure about what they want, this pressure can feel suffocating. Instead of being honest about their feelings or lack of readiness, they lie to create the illusion that they are on the same page as their partner. This can involve making promises they have no intention of keeping or offering reassurances about the future that they don't truly believe in. The hope is that by doing so, they can avoid confrontation or the discomfort of being honest about their uncertainty. In many cases, the fear of commitment is tied to the belief that they're not enough for their partner. Some men worry that they'll fail to live up to their partner's expectations or that they won't be able to meet the responsibilities that come with a serious relationship. Instead of facing these feelings of inadequacy and working through them, they may choose to lie about their intentions or desires. The lie allows them to avoid dealing with the pressure they feel to be perfect or to live up to an idealized version of themselves. The fear of commitment can stem from a sense of loss of personal identity. Some men fear that in committing to someone else, they'll lose themselves or their independence. The idea of giving up personal space or freedom can be a daunting thought for those who value their autonomy. They may lie to themselves and their partner, convincing themselves that they're ready for a commitment when in reality, they're still wrestling with the fear of losing their sense of self. The lies are a way to maintain the illusion that they're okay with giving up certain aspects of their life, even though deep down they're not prepared to make those sacrifices. The fear of commitment drives men to lie as a way to protect themselves from the vulnerability and responsibility that come with making a serious commitment. They lie because they're not ready to confront their own feelings of inadequacy, fear of failure, or fear of losing their independence. However, this kind of dishonesty prevents true emotional intimacy from developing. It creates confusion and frustration in the relationship, as the partner is left questioning where they stand and where the commitment is truly mutual. Men often lie to avoid responsibility. This is a common tendency, particularly when they feel overwhelmed or unprepared to handle the demands placed on them, whether in their personal lives, relationships, or careers. The fear of facing responsibility can stem from many factors, including a lack of confidence, the pressure to succeed, or the desire to avoid confrontation and stress. When men are faced with situations where they need to take ownership of something, whether it's a mistake, a difficult decision, or an obligation, the instinct to avoid the situation can lead them to lie. It's easier to fabricate an excuse or avoid the issue altogether than to confront the reality of their responsibilities. In relationships, this avoidance often manifests as dishonesty about commitments, actions, or feelings. Men might lie about their intentions, not because they don't care, but because they are not ready to commit to the level of responsibility that the relationship demands. Instead of being upfront about their inability or reluctance to step up, they lie to maintain the appearance of being capable and willing to take on the responsibility. For example, they might make promises they can't keep, say they'll handle things they're not prepared for, or downplay the seriousness of a situation to avoid the responsibility that comes with it. The lie serves as a temporary fix, allowing them to dodge the uncomfortable reality of having to follow through. This tendency to avoid responsibility can also be linked to a fear of failure. Many men are conditioned to feel that success is essential, not just for their own well-being, but also for how they are perceived by others. The thought of failing or making a mistake can be terrifying, leading some to lie as a means of preventing anyone from seeing their shortcomings. They might avoid admitting to errors, whether it's in their work, their relationships, or personal lives, because owning up to a mistake would require them to take responsibility and possibly face the consequences. Instead, they choose to lie to shield themselves from the potential embarrassment or shame of failure. This avoidance of responsibility can also stem from a lack of emotional maturity or self-awareness. Men who haven't developed the skills to cope with stress or difficult situations may find it easier to lie than to confront the challenges head on. Another reason men lie to avoid responsibility is that they might feel overburdened by the expectations placed on them, whether those expectations are from family, society, or themselves. When they feel like they are constantly being held to high standards, the pressure can become overwhelming. Instead of facing up to the responsibilities that come with these expectations, they might lie to keep things manageable in the short term. They might say they are handling things when they're not, or act as if everything is under control when in reality they are struggling. Lying becomes a defense mechanism, a way to protect themselves from further pressure or judgment. The problem with lying to avoid responsibility is that it prevents personal growth. When men constantly avoid taking responsibility, they miss out on the opportunities to learn, grow, and mature. Responsibility is a crucial part of adulthood, and it plays an important role in developing trust and respect in relationships. By lying to avoid responsibility, men are preventing themselves from facing the challenges that would ultimately help them become better, more accountable individuals. The lies only build a fragile foundation that can lead to bigger problems down the line. Whether it's in a relationship, at work, or in their personal lives, avoiding responsibility through dishonesty undermines their ability to create lasting solutions and healthy connections with others. Men often lie because they fear confrontation. This is one of the most common reasons for dishonesty in relationships, as well as in personal and professional interactions. For many men, the thought of engaging in a direct confrontation or addressing difficult topics can evoke feelings of anxiety and discomfort. Confrontation, even when necessary, often brings up feelings of vulnerability, fear of being judged, or the possibility of escalation into a conflict that could harm the relationship. Rather than face these potential negative outcomes, men may lie as a means of sidestepping difficult conversations altogether. They might try to keep things smooth, avoid tension, or delay an inevitable discussion by providing false information or withholding the truth. Fear of confrontation can also be deeply tied to past experiences. Many men have been conditioned to avoid conflict as a survival mechanism, either from childhood, where they may have witnessed or been involved in volatile situations, or from past relationships where confrontations led to negative outcomes. They may have learned that addressing conflict head-on leads to uncomfortable emotions, strained relationships, or even breakups. This creates a pattern of avoidance that can continue into adulthood, where the man lies as a way of managing any situation that might lead to an argument or a dispute. In these cases, the lie is not necessarily about malice or deceit, but about protecting oneself from perceived harm. The fear of confrontation can also manifest as a defense mechanism. For example, some men may fear that revealing the truth will make them appear weak or incompetent, or it could potentially lead to the end of a relationship. In their minds, it's easier to lie and maintain the current dynamic than risk the fallout from a confrontation that may lead to rejection or disapproval. There's a deep fear that the truth will hurt the other person or expose flaws that they're not ready to admit. So instead of being open, they choose to lie to keep the peace. This choice to avoid confrontation might stem from a desire to protect the other person from discomfort, but it also stems from an inability to face the emotional risks that accompany open, honest communication. At times, men might lie to avoid being perceived in a negative light. They may worry that confronting certain topics, especially those that are sensitive or personal, will cause others to view them as less capable, less strong, or even unworthy. Whether it's an issue regarding their personal life, their job, or their relationship, they fear that engaging in confrontation could lead to judgment, ridicule, or an emotional toll. Lying in these situations serves as a protective barrier, allowing them to avoid the scrutiny they fear from others, but it also prevents them from truly addressing the core issues in their lives. Fear of confrontation and the accompanying lies can strain relationships. When lies are told to avoid difficult conversations, the underlying issues are never fully addressed. This creates an emotional distance between partners, as one person may feel left out of the loop or unsure about where the relationship stands. As the lies accumulate, the trust in a relationship erodes, and what could have been a learning moment or an opportunity for growth becomes a missed chance for connection and understanding. The fear of confrontation that leads to lies becomes a vicious cycle, where avoidance only increases the tension and the emotional distance. In essence, lying to avoid confrontation is a temporary solution to a much larger problem. The discomfort or anxiety associated with confrontation is real, but dishonesty never resolves the underlying issue. Instead, it only prolongs the inevitable and complicates matters further. While confrontation may be difficult, it is through facing these challenging conversations that relationships strengthen, trust is built, and growth occurs. Lying may feel like the easier option in the moment, but in the long run, it only leads to more confusion, frustration, and heartache. The key to breaking this cycle is recognizing that open, honest communication is the only way to foster true understanding and intimacy. Men often lie because they fear rejection. The fear of rejection is one of the most powerful forces that can drive a man to be dishonest, and it's rooted in a deep-seated insecurity about not being good enough or worthy of love, respect, or admiration. This fear can manifest in many ways. And when a man fears being rejected, he might choose to lie in order to avoid the potential for hurt or abandonment. It's not necessarily about malice or intent to deceive, but rather an instinct to protect himself from the vulnerability that comes with being open and honest about his feelings, desires, or weaknesses. For many men, being vulnerable is seen as a risk, especially when it comes to relationships. From an early age, many men are taught to be strong, independent, and emotionally resilient. They are often encouraged to hide their emotions, suppress their fears, and avoid showing any signs of weakness. This conditioning can make it difficult for men to admit when they are uncertain or insecure, especially in the context of romantic relationships. The fear of being rejected by their partner or by society because they are not measuring up to these ideals can make them feel inadequate. As a result, instead of confronting these feelings head on, they lie about their intentions, their feelings, or their circumstances to avoid being perceived as vulnerable or unworthy. In romantic relationships, this fear of rejection can often lead men to lie about their commitment or their intentions. They may downplay the seriousness of the relationship to avoid the pressure that comes with it, especially if they are unsure about how they truly feel. They might say things like, "I'm not looking for anything serious," or "I just need some space," even if that isn't the full truth. The underlying fear is that if they admit that they are uncertain or hesitant, they might be rejected or judged by their partner. By lying, they are attempting to preserve their sense of control and avoid putting themselves in a position where they might be vulnerable to rejection. For some men, the fear of rejection is also tied to their sense of identity. If they perceive their self-worth as being tied to their ability to succeed in relationships, they may feel that revealing any flaw or uncertainty could lead to their partner questioning their worthiness. The fear of not being good enough can cause them to lie about things that they feel might make them less attractive or desirable, such as their career status, financial situation, or even aspects of their past. By lying, they believe they are keeping their partner from seeing them as inadequate or flawed. This desire to maintain a perfect image free from any imperfections can create a barrier between the truth of who they really are and the false narrative they try to project. This fear of rejection is not always about romantic relationships either. Men often lie to avoid rejection in friendships, professional settings, or even in their family dynamics. In a work environment, for example, they might exaggerate their accomplishments or downplay their mistakes to appear more competent and successful. In friendships, they might hide their true feelings or pretend to be someone they are not to fit in or avoid being judged. In families, they may avoid confronting uncomfortable truths or discussing personal struggles to maintain a certain image or avoid disappointing loved ones. In each of these situations, the underlying fear is the same, the fear of being rejected or judged for not measuring up. The problem with lying to avoid rejection is that it prevents men from forming authentic connections. The more they lie to protect themselves from rejection, the more isolated they become. They may end up feeling disconnected from others because they are unable to be their true selves. Rejection, though painful, is a natural part of life, and learning to embrace vulnerability and authenticity is key to building meaningful relationships. Lying to avoid rejection might offer temporary relief, but it only deepens the fear and creates more barriers in the long run. Ultimately, it's only through facing the fear of rejection and embracing the possibility of vulnerability that men can build the confidence to be open, honest, and true to themselves. Men often lie to avoid discomfort. This is something many individuals struggle with, as facing uncomfortable situations can stir up emotions they prefer to avoid. When confronted with a scenario that requires them to step outside their comfort zone, many men will lie to make things easier for themselves, or at least to avoid dealing with the emotional strain of confronting an uncomfortable truth. The discomfort they want to avoid could be emotional pain, awkwardness, or simply the vulnerability of being honest. It's easier in their minds to tell a lie that can temporarily smooth over a situation than to face the discomfort of telling the truth. For some men, this discomfort stems from fear of vulnerability. Many have been taught either directly or indirectly that vulnerability is a weakness, whether in romantic relationships, friendships, or family dynamics. Showing emotions like sadness, fear, or confusion might be seen as a sign of weakness or inadequacy. As a result, many men suppress their true feelings to protect their sense of self. In relationships, when faced with the need to express their emotions or discuss something that makes them uncomfortable, they might lie to avoid exposing their vulnerability. They may tell their partner they are fine when they are not, or make up excuses for not engaging in certain conversations simply because they fear the emotional discomfort that might come from being open. In other cases, the discomfort men seek to avoid is the fear of conflict. Confrontation or disagreements can be challenging, especially for someone who doesn't know how to navigate difficult conversations. Instead of being upfront about their feelings or addressing issues directly, some men will lie to prevent an argument or avoid saying something that might cause tension. They may deny something they said or avoid taking responsibility for their actions, hoping that by lying they can keep the peace. This avoidance can stem from a deep desire to maintain harmony in the relationship or avoid a situation where emotions might run high. By telling lies, they believe they are keeping things under control, but in reality, they are simply postponing the inevitable dealing with the issue at hand. Another source of discomfort that might drive men to lie is the pressure of expectations. Many men are expected to perform at high levels in various aspects of their lives, whether it's their career, their family roles, or in their relationships. This pressure to live up to these standards can be overwhelming. When they feel they are falling short of these expectations, it can create significant discomfort, especially if they fear disappointing others. To shield themselves from feeling inadequate or from being judged for not measuring up, men may lie about their successes or hide their struggles. They may fabricate stories of achievement or gloss over their challenges to maintain the image of success and avoid the discomfort of facing their perceived failures. Lying to avoid discomfort also has a significant impact on the trust and emotional intimacy in relationships. When men consistently lie to avoid the discomfort of difficult conversations or situations, they create a false sense of security. The person they are with may begin to feel disconnected or unsure about where they stand. The lack of honesty creates a barrier between the two people, as one is left questioning the true feelings or intentions of the other. While the lie might seem like an easy way to avoid short-term discomfort, it only complicates things in the long run. Lying to avoid discomfort might offer temporary relief, but it also prevents men from growing emotionally and developing stronger relationships. True intimacy and trust can only be built when both parties are willing to confront uncomfortable truths and communicate honestly. Avoiding discomfort through lies creates a pattern of dishonesty that hinders real connection, and while it might seem easier at the moment, it prevents personal growth and the development of meaningful relationships. Men often lie because they want to protect someone else's feeling. This is a common motivator for dishonesty, particularly in relationships, where one partner may choose to withhold the truth or alter the facts to avoid hurting the other person. While this can sometimes stem from good intentions, the reality is that this form of lying can cause more harm than good in the long run. The desire to shield someone from hurt, rejection, or disappointment can create a false sense of security, leaving unresolved issues to fester beneath the surface. In relationships, particularly romantic ones, men may choose to lie about their emotions, intentions, or actions because they fear that the truth could cause unnecessary pain or jeopardize the relationship. They may convince themselves that they are doing the right thing by not being completely honest, believing that the other person is better off not knowing certain details. For example, if a man is no longer feeling the same way about a relationship, he may lie about his commitment or hide the fact that he is losing interest. He may do this because he doesn't want to hurt his partner's feelings or cause a breakup. The fear of the emotional toll that a conversation about the state of the relationship could take might feel overwhelming. So the lie becomes a way to temporarily avoid the pain and discomfort of facing the truth. At the same time, this avoidance creates emotional distance as the underlying issues continue to grow unaddressed, ultimately leading to even more hurt down the line. By hiding the truth, the man may prevent an immediate emotional reaction, but the lack of transparency chips away at the foundation of trust and authenticity in the relationship. A man might lie to protect someone else's feelings when it comes to personal shortcomings or mistakes. If he has made a mistake or is feeling insecure about a particular situation, he might tell a lie to prevent others from seeing him in a negative light. This could happen in friendships or family relationships where he doesn't want to disappoint loved ones. For example, he might lie about his financial status, his career progress, or how well things are going in his personal life simply to avoid showing vulnerability or weakness. He lies because he fears that revealing the truth could hurt those who care about him. In these instances, the lie is motivated by a desire to maintain the image of a strong, capable individual, even though the reality may be far different. While the desire to protect others is often rooted in love and care, this kind of dishonesty can have serious consequences. When men choose to protect someone else's feelings by lying, they inadvertently undermine trust in the relationship. The person being protected may eventually sense that something is off, and this can lead to confusion, doubt, and even further emotional harm when the truth eventually comes to light. Lies designed to protect others can create emotional barriers that make it difficult to resolve underlying issues and work through challenges in a healthy way. The notion that lying to protect someone's feelings is an act of love is often misguided. True love in a relationship involves honesty, even when it is difficult. By being transparent about emotions, needs, and concerns, individuals can create a safe space for vulnerability and growth. Lies, even when told with good intentions, prevent this kind of genuine connection. They create a cycle of deception that can erode the trust between partners or friends and ultimately result in more harm than if the truth had been shared from the beginning. Protecting someone from temporary discomfort by lying ultimately leads to deeper emotional wounds when the truth inevitably emerges. Men often lie because they want to maintain control in a situation. Control is a powerful motivator, especially for individuals who feel that losing control would lead to discomfort or chaos. Many men find comfort in having a sense of power or influence over their circumstances, whether it's in their personal life, their career, or their relationships. This desire for control can be rooted in various factors, including past experiences, insecurities, or cultural conditioning that emphasizes strength and dominance. When faced with a situation that threatens their control, the tendency to lie becomes a way to regain that power or maintain the appearance of stability. In relationships, a man may lie to his partner to keep things within a space where he feels he has authority or dominance. He might downplay certain issues, mislead his partner about his intentions, or hide important details to avoid a situation where he feels vulnerable or exposed. The lie serves as a way to avoid relinquishing control over the dynamics of the relationship. If he feels that revealing the truth would lead to conflict or a change in the relationship that he is not prepared for, he may choose to lie to keep things in the status quo. This could involve lying about his feelings, his plans, or even the degree of commitment he has to the relationship, all in an effort to preserve a sense of control and stability. The desire to control a situation can also manifest in how men respond to challenges. Instead of confronting difficult problems or emotions directly, they may resort to lies to steer the narrative in a direction that feels more manageable. In professional settings, this can look like exaggerating achievements, downplaying failures, or taking credit for things they didn't do, all to maintain a strong and competent image. The need to be seen as capable and in control can drive men to misrepresent their actions or accomplishments, believing that these lies are necessary to avoid appearing weak or inadequate. The lie, in this case, serves to uphold the facade of success and competency, even if it comes at the cost of honesty. When men feel like they are losing control of their lives, they might lie to others or themselves to protect their self-image. If they're struggling with personal issues, financial challenges, or emotional turmoil, the fear of being seen as out of control can drive them to fabricate stories or hide the truth. Lying in these instances can provide a temporary buffer against feelings of failure or inadequacy. By presenting an idealized version of themselves, they believe they can preserve their dignity and avoid being judged or rejected. The lie acts as a shield that prevents others from seeing the vulnerability that comes with not having everything figured out, keeping their image intact in the process. The issue with using lies to maintain control is that it creates a fragile foundation. The more a man lies to protect his sense of control, the more complex the situation becomes. Lies can lead to confusion, mistrust, and even further loss of control as the web of deception grows. When the truth eventually comes to light, it can unravel the very control that the lie was meant to protect. Relationships may suffer, careers may be affected, and personal integrity may be compromised. The desire for control through lying often leads to a cycle of deception that makes it more difficult to regain real control over the situation. True control comes not from deception, but from transparency and honesty. When individuals are honest about their feelings, struggles, and intentions, they create the space for real connections and personal growth. The lies that are meant to protect control often end up eroding trust and creating greater chaos. In the long run, it is only through facing difficult truths, and relinquishing the need for false control that men can find real strength and stability in their relationships, careers, and personal lives. Men lie to good women for many reasons, but none of these reasons justify dishonesty in a relationship. Lies might seem like they're protecting you, but they only create more harm in the long run. Trust, honesty, and communication are the foundation of any healthy relationship. When a man lies to you, it's not just a lie that hurts, it's the erosion of trust that will be harder to rebuild than any words ever could. The key is knowing your worth, understanding that you deserve honesty, and never accepting less than the truth from someone who claims to care about you.